Let me introduce you to my prototype RC airplane navigation system. I fly quite a bit at night. I fly over the water, and a few years ago I bought a navigation light system, put on my Eflite Apprentice, and loved the bejiggers out of it. It was quite a complete system. Had two strobe lights, had wingtip, had the wingtip strobe lights, the tail strobe light, the top and bottom rotating beacons, and had quite a few features that you could turn things on and off with the switches. It had multiple lights to gang up for a pretty bright landing light setup. Unfortunately, my Apprentice, I still fly the stock radio on there, so I only had one channel, so I wasn't able to tap into the full features of the flight time selections. So a little bit upset about that, but we just turned on so the lights would come on. I think I could turn the landing lights on and off, and that was about it. When it came time, I just acquired a couple other airplanes that I thought would do really good with the same navigation light system. Went to checkup, and that company's no longer. Went through a few other internet searches and found a few other sources, but I just couldn't find anything quite as complete as that first set that I had. And contacted a gentleman who did some customized working, but without getting terribly expensive in the customization, there just weren't the options. He basically had all the options that I wanted to, but just not all in one package, not all running off of one transmitter channel, and it was going to take a little bit of work, a little bit of expense to get all the features that I wanted to out of his system. And it got me, the more and more I interfaced with him and examined his system and talked about some of the limitations that he had with what he had to offer, I started giving more and more thought to this Arduino project. I bought a little starter kit. I plan to do a turn signal module, a custom turn signal module for my motorcycle, which I still haven't done, but that's been sitting, this starter kit, some of the parts have actually been sitting in a shrink wrap for over a year now. And the more and more I talk to this guy, it's, well, you know, I went to school for electrical engineering. I've been an electronics technician for a number of decades. And it got down to where, you know, designing and wiring up the component circuitry. I do controls engineering for a living, so programming industrial controllers is what I do for a living. So learning a programming language environment, it was just a matter of applying the time. And when you have to do a lot of circuit design, you have to learn a programming language, come up with all that stuff from scratch without a real good head start. You know what? It seems a bit overwhelming, and you got other projects to do. After all, I do RC flying. I'd rather be out, if it's a nice day, I'd rather be out flying. Well, push comes to shove. David was actually quite the inspiration after looking what he had over there, and I thought, well, you know what, I could use his parts, use some of the offerings that he has for concept, and why don't I use this as an excuse to learn this Arduino programming. I had actually done tutorials and did some limited C programming, C++ programming, basic programming, Visual Basic programming, as well as a lot of other scripting. It's like the Arduino language, kind of stealing off a bit of the C and C++ program. There's no reason why I couldn't pick that up again. So I applied myself and loaded all the programming software, did a bunch of scroll through a bunch of examples, some tutorials, and wouldn't you know, here I am. I end up building all my codes from scratch. It's taken a number of hours, quite a few iterations. It may not be the prettiest, but it's organized enough to where I can turn things on and off. I can adjust the values, and I'm leaving myself plenty of space for customizing. And because this is my program, I get to change things in the future. This is something I can not just spec out and have, say, David build me a system, burn me a chip, and then if I want something different, I've got to get on the phone and make a phone call, beg and plead, and then try to communicate what I want, and have him have to send me videos or whatever the deal might be, and try to establish whether or not he's on the right path or not. It's like, well, I can sit here, try it, run it, and if what I originally spec'd out was wrong, doesn't fit right, I can just continue to change it until it feels right. So here it is. I got all the lights flashing, kind of roughed out, you know, an approximate location where I put on the plane. So you'll see on the left side here, I've got what would be my wingtip lights. I've got the red navigation. I've got a flashing strobe. On the right side, I've got the green navigation light as well as the wingtip strobe. In the front, I've got my landing lights. In the middle here, back, I have what would be on the tail fin and on the tail cone for a strobe and navigation light. And over here, side by side, I have a pair of beacon lights, rotating beacon lights. One would be on the top of the fuselage, one on the underbelly. So those are all the lights, all cycling, and typically you get a chance to usually cycle through the navigation lights off. You turn them on, and then you can turn the navigation lights on and the landing lights on. Well, David offers some options about some flashing modes, which I guess I wasn't really aware of, and I started looking. It's like, oh yeah, there are some interesting landing light flashing sequences, I'm assuming used by the bush pilots, the float plane pilots, coming through it, and I've seen a couple of videos where you see the flashing landing lights as they make their pass. So I thought, well, that would be fun. After all, I'm going to be putting this on planes that are somewhat of a STOL style plane, or put them on the floats and I fly over the lake and there'll be the float plane flying, and you know what, that would definitely be scale appropriate to have some of those fancy flashing sequences. So the previous light set that I had, I said earlier, I couldn't tap into all of the on-off features for flying because they used one radio channel to control one set, and the other one to turn, I think it was something like one channel was to turn the navigation light set on and off, and the other one was to turn the landing lights on and off. And that was it. You basically had the 3 modes or 4 modes out of there, and it took up 2 complete radio channels. And all of our RC hobbyists are all going to know that channels are precious. It doesn't matter if you've got yourself a 12-channel radio. Once you start loading your airplanes up with toys, which here we are, you know, you could be putting smoke systems on, landing gears, you could have flapperons and flaps, and it just goes on and on about all the toys that you start putting onto these airplanes. By the time I'd be putting a set of navigation lights on it. So yeah, use it very sparingly. The hardware I/O on the radios. So right now I'm using one, and this is my first iteration, and I'll be using basically this is a little cheap 4-channel radio, so nothing fancy, and I got it on my DX18 here, where I've got just a plethora of switches and sliders and trim buttons and knobs and whatever else and sliders that I want to use here for triggering these channels. So because it's an analog value, I can set up zones, and there's no reason why I would be selected to just a simple 2-position on-off switch to turn features on and off. So right now we're using the stock aileron channel, and what I have here is I have 3 positions. I have a center position, a left position, and a right position. So center position, is the nominal value there where nothing happens. I have a set so when I make a right movement, it triggers a right switch, and when I move a left movement, it becomes a left switch toggle, and I can toggle through different modes. So as I recall here, well, you know, one more feature here. One of the other issues I thought about once I started thinking I was going to go down this project and I'd have these toggle switches turning all my lights on and off of that. Okay, so I'm flying at night, and I sometimes will fly when it's darker than blazes out there, and you start toggling switches, and you know, you throw this one switch and you thought, oh yeah, I went the wrong way on that one. Well, if the wrong way turns off all navigation lights, that would not be fun. So I thought, well, you know what, I'd like to turn the navigation lights on and off, but what if I'm in the flying at night? Well, because this is a programmable Arduino, and it has not only digital I/O, it also has analog I/O. I put in a little photoresistor over here. I could put that on the airplane somewhere and detect and set a parameter and decide that it's daylight or it's night, and then have different modes. So we'll put my little flashlight on here, and we'll pretend like it's daylight. So in the daylight hours, I'll toggle the right switch, and you'll see that my landing lights have turned off. It was in the wig-wag mode earlier. I'll toggle it to the right again, and the landing lights are now on. Toggle it again. I got the simultaneous flash. Toggle it again. We're back to the wig-wag. Toggle it again, and they're off. So I can do that continuously and just cycle through the headlight modes. Now if I go to the left, there it is. I've turned off my landing light, or my navigation lights. Hit it again. I fire up the rotating beacons. Hit it again. Turn on the navigation lights. And notice the beacons. There's another wish on my wish list there. My old one, the beacons would come on. I think they were on and off at the same time. Usually you're not in a place where you can actually see both beacons at the same time. But if you really had two mechanical, motorized, rotating beacons, they're not going to be synchronized, and they're probably not going to turn at the same rate. I assume that they're going to be spec'd out to run at the same rate, but you know, they're never going to hold true. So one of my desires was to make sure that they were not synchronized. So I have two independent rotating beacons flashing at just ever so slightly rates. So you'll see that they kind of keep that scale look there, that they walk through the simultaneous flash, then eventually work to an alternating flash, and then work their way right back up to a simultaneous flash that you can see going on right now as it walks into synchronization, and then it'll walk right back out of the same synchronization. And the next mode to the left turns on my strobes. Now I've got a lot of planes that fly over the head over here. I get small planes going into our Flying Cloud Airport. I got a lot of commercial airliners going into the international airport. And as I recalled, I thought they had a double flash on the wingtips and a single flash on the tail. I might be mistaken. I'll have to get back out there, but it's been pretty cloudy lately, and it's cold, so I don't spend as much time outdoors looking up. And of course, in the summertime, it's light out till quite late, so you don't see a whole lot of planes flying then. So I'll have to get out there and start paying a little more attention to the various strobe flashing. But because this is my my own program, I've left out parameters in there to do a double count and a single count. I could go in there and I change it, and again, I could always go back in here and put in another mode in there and step through possibly different strobe modes. Right now I turn the strobe mode on and off, but maybe I'll put myself some modes where I can have a double wing tip and a single wing tip, or a double tail, whatever modes I want to. Or maybe I'll decide to make a go through one menu selection if it's a half move, or another menu selection if it's a full move. I'm guessing that there's a whole lot of things I can do with this. Or if I really want to get lazy, I suppose I can always throw in another radio channel and run through a second channel just for setup at the field. But at this point, I can do it through the programming software, set up various parameters. Another thing you'll notice here is I'm getting these really bright LEDs coming in, and one of the things I'm kind of concerned about is that as I do these various strobes and beacons and landing lights, if the navigation lights are all the same intensity, then the landing lights won't look like they're really super high intensity. And likewise, I want the strobes to look really bright. So what I've gotten here is that you'll notice that I have the navigation lights. I've actually put on a PWM output, and I actually run a duty cycle on those, which is actually dimming the navigation lights, so the navigation lights are going to glow. So we'll see how that works there. Again, I could potentially put that on a setup. I could put that on say a rotary dial if I wanted to fly out there and rotate a rotary dial there to actually dim them in flight if I wanted to. So I'm going to play with that to see how I can customize and get the look on the final product to dial in right. I was actually pretty surprised on how far down I got the duty cycle to get these things to get to a very recognizable dimmed in relationship to the full brightness, which then just makes things like the strobes look like they're flashing that much brighter. It makes the beacon look a little bit brighter, and the landing lights should also be relatively brighter if I dim the navigation lights. I'm expecting these navigation lights are going to be really stinking bright, and instead of being blinding, I was really happy with my small LEDs, but these things here are considerably larger and higher current machines than what I had on my last setup. So now that I've taken my flashlight away from the photo sensor, and now we're in the dark mode, I'll walk you through the modes again here. So if I do the landing light mode, you see the landing light turns off. Or no, we went into the flash. Go to the wig-wag, and then off. Back to on. Flash. Wig-wag, and off. So nothing's changed there. But now that I'm in the dark here, we got the full setup on the navigation lights, the beacons, and the strobes. If I toggle that, I've just simply turned off the strobes. The beacons and the navigation lights are on. Toggle it again, back to strobes and navigations and the beacons. So I keep toggling it, and I'm only toggling between two modes right now. Basically, I'm just turning the strobes on and off when I'm flying at night. So I can toggle this thing as much as I like, and I'm never going to be able to turn off that navigation light. Now, of course, then comes out in the daylight, and then they all turn off. Back to beacons. Beacons and navigation. Beacons, navigation, and strobe. Another feature that I got on here is that whatever mode I happen to have it set up on, I store those modes into the EEPROM. So if you kill the power, we plug it in again, change the battery at the field, whatever we do, it goes right back into the same mode that we left it in. Likewise, shut down the transmitter, radio receiver will power off, so there's no longer a pulse train, but the navigation lights continue to run in the last mode selected. So conceivably I could set this thing up ahead of time. select a flying mode, I wouldn't even have to plug this into a radio channel. I could just drop this navigation light into something, and every time it powers on, I'll just have whatever defaults that previous selected. So I'll turn the landing lights. I got the navigation lights, the beacons, and the strobes all running. I can shut down the transmitter. Radio receiver's off. And then power down. It powers back up. There it is. I got my landing lights are on again. I got the whole system's running. So that's in a nutshell where I'm at on this. I'm expecting my LEDs to show up any day now. I've got more electronics sitting in a bag to build a breadboard, hook up because these are high current. They won't be able to drive straight off the controller like I am doing here. So we'll have some Darlington transistor arrays to plug in. I'll do a little bit more circuit design, put it on a piece of copper, and once this is all set up, even the this little programming device won't be there anymore. So as far as components, that's my controller. That tiny little circuit board, that's all I'm going to have for a controller board in there. So that plus some supporting electronics. And as you can see, this breadboard is more wire than anything. But yeah, there'll be a little Darlington array in there, a handful of resistors, and we'll remote mount that photo eye out somewhere on the fuselage. And I think this is going to be a whole lot of fun. I can't wait to get the videos of the finished product. Well, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next part.